Little housekeeping, I'm Mariah Bruce. I wanted to welcome everyone here. I'm part of the Sandwich Substance Abuse Task Force and Freedom from Addiction Network. If you'd like to learn anything more about those two groups, there will be people after the event in the back parish hall with the food, and they could hopefully answer any questions you may have. Lisa Heller Borgini is an associate professor of communication at Cape Cod Community College, where she teaches classes in communication, argumentation, and debate, and related courses. She advises the debate club and the environmental sustainability club at the college. Public debates are one of her favorite activities, as they are the lifeblood of a living democracy. And without further ado, Lisa.
Thank you for that introduction. I'm really excited to see you here today. I think this is going to be an interesting debate, and lucky for us, we have time for audience involvement and engagement, and we definitely hope that you take advantage of that. That will come halfway through the process. Before we begin, however, the activity, I would like to first introduce a very important person. We're so happy that he's here. He's going to give a brief explanation of the citizen petition process so that you understand how this ballot initiative came to be, that we are all here to debate. So I'd like to introduce Mark Forrest, the former Chief of Staff for Congressman Bill Delahunt. He also teaches at the college, so he's a colleague of mine at 4Cs. He teaches civics and public policy. And he also consults on public policy as part of the Delahunt group. So thank you very much. Mark Forrest.
Lisa, thank you. Thank you very much. By now, I hope you folks have all seen your red booklet, right? This is put up by the Secretary of State's office, and it's information for voters. It's the ballot guide for the upcoming election. And in this red booklet, if you don't have it, you can get it at Town Hall, you can get it at the local library. But the information that is in it is very detailed in terms of each of the ballot questions. Okay, so if you're interested in reading the exact details of all of the ballot questions, and including this one, which is quite lengthy, and I'm not going to read it to you tonight, but it's important that you take a look at this red guide, all right? So I highly recommend it to you. In Massachusetts, it's important to note that we're one of 24 states in the country that actually allow voters to be involved in crafting public policy through the initiative petition process. Okay, 24 states. And in Massachusetts, this process is spelled out as an amendment to the state constitution. Okay, so we have incorporated into our constitution here in Massachusetts specific provisions which allow people to participate directly in either amending a law, creating a law, or revising a law in some way. All right, and what I'd like to do is just give you a brief overview of that process. It won't take long. But it'll give you some insight as to the power that you, the people, have, you, the citizens, have in crafting public policy here in Massachusetts. All right, now this process begins very simply when 10 or more voters, all right, begin the petition process by actually contacting the Attorney General and notifying the Attorney General of their interest in putting a ballot question on the ballot. Okay? Now, the Attorney General in Massachusetts, in this case Martha Coakley, looks at the question and looked at specifically this proposal, and then made a determination as to whether or not the question and the proposal itself conforms to state law. Now, in Massachusetts, under our Constitution, you can't just pass a law on anything through the initiative petition process. Under our Constitution, there are certain areas that are off limits. For example, proposals to change the judiciary, proposals to deal with religious freedoms, proposal to deal with the state's Bill of Rights, which is included in the document, things like that. You can't, for example, subject to an initiative petition, a question dealing with the court system or the judiciary, okay? So once this petition is submitted to the Attorney General, they have to render an opinion on it as to whether or not the question itself and the proposal is conforming with the state constitution. And assuming that it is, the next step in this process, and at times can appear to be cumbersome, the next step in this process is to then be in touch with the Secretary of State's office and begin the actual process of collecting enough signatures to get the question on the ballot. Now in Massachusetts, we require over 68,000 signatures on a particular ballot question, statewide, okay? So once this group that was proposing this ballot question contacted, finished with the Attorney General's office, got the certification there, and went to the Secretary of State's office, what the Secretary of State will do is print up signature sheets, nomination papers like, and then each individual can basically sign off on the sheet, and then we go through a process of getting the signature certified, and then once the 68,000 signatures, and in this case, with this question, the proponents of this question actually got initially over 80,000 signatures. All right? They spent an awful lot of time going around the Commonwealth, getting people to sign, asking them whether or not they wanted to see a question like this on the ballot. And in a minute, I'll just give you some of the highlights of exactly what the question is, so you have some idea of exactly what it is we're debating, okay? So once that process is done, and once all the signatures are collected and brought in, then the next step is to give the Massachusetts legislature a chance to speak to this proposal. So in this case, once the signatures were in, once all the certified signatures were in, the Massachusetts legislature had up until May 2nd to actually vote on this measure. And under our Constitution, if the legislature votes, the legislature can actually vote to amend the proposal or submit it and approve it as is. It gives, this step in this process gives actually legislators a chance to weigh in and say something. So in this case, May 2nd came and went, but the Massachusetts legislature held hearings, allowed from some interesting debate on Beacon Hill, but chose not to act on this proposal. Now what that meant is that the group promoting this initiative had to go and get more signatures, in this case roughly 11,000, and then once those were done and certified, then this question was set for the ballot. So it gives you an idea of the fairly, I don't want to say cumbersome, but the idea is here in Massachusetts that if we're going to amend the law or pass a law and give that responsibility to a group of voters, or the voters in Massachusetts, and through an initiative petition process, the whole idea here is to make sure that it's a proposal that's worthy of consideration. All right? So in this case, the question that you'll see on the ballot is very simple, and it will ask the voters to approve the production, sale, and use of marijuana for medicinal purposes. And the question itself will actually reduce or eliminate some of the criminal penalties on it. Now, what I'm going to do is just read the first section of this particular guide. This isn't from me. I'm going to read you exactly the language as it appears in your red voter guide. And it basically says simply, this proposed law, this is a summary of it, this proposed law would eliminate state criminal and civil penalties for the medicinal use of marijuana by qualifying patients. To qualify, a patient must have been diagnosed with a debilitating medical condition. And then it goes on in detail to describe the kinds of medical conditions that would qualify. There are a whole series of sections in this proposal, sections dealing with defining what the proposed definition for the facilities that can actually produce marijuana, definitions regarding the regulation, and in this case, with this proposal, it's the Massachusetts Department of Public Health that will be heavily involved in actually carrying out the rules and regulations to implement this law, should it pass in November. So there are roughly 13 or 14 sections. It's actually quite lengthy. I'm not going to read it in detail, but like I said, there's a brief summary of it, and all the details are included in this red booklet. So when you go to the post office or stop by town hall, or if you're in the library, you can easily find it. So in a nutshell, that is some background on the initiative petition process, and I want to commend you all for putting this together. I haven't taken a position on this issue, but I'm very much interested in hearing this debate this evening. So thank you. Enjoy.
Big thank you to Mark Forrest. That was very succinctly and well explained, and I appreciated that. One thing I'd like to do now is to give you a little rundown of how the evening's events will work. We're going going to have a couple of opportunities for the audience to participate. One is to participate with these clickers. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have a little pre-vote with the clickers. Then we're going to have our debate. In the middle of the debate, the audience will again have an opportunity to participate, this time verbally, and to either ask questions of the debaters or to offer opinions for or against either side. After that discussion, we will have one final speech from each side of the debate, and then we'll have a final clicker discussion here. After the discussion, we'll have a final clicker vote, and then you'll get to do a paper vote as well, for or against the petition. The clicker votes are different than the paper vote, because the paper vote is basically just asking you, which side are you on? But the nice thing about these is that you'll see the questions that we will be asked to entertain will be a little bit more nuanced. There will be a little bit more detail surrounding these. So I'm going to explain these in just a second. But first, I just wanted to basically introduce who's in front of you today. Myself, I've already been introduced. I'm a professor and I'm the advisor for the debate club. Every student here is either an active member of the club or an alumni of the club. Many students here are officers. And so all of these participants here are all current or alumni students or staff at Cape Cod Community College who have spent extensive hours researching this issue. So I just wanted to let you know that these are informed citizens who are informing other citizens about the ballot initiative. In some cases, the students' opinions may actually be the same as their own position on the debate, but in other times they may not. So please don't assume that a student is actually advocating for that issue on their own behalf, because that may or may not be true. Okay, so I explained how the clickers work. Okay, so everyone take a look at your clickers. Are we going to have a fake vote first?
Yes.
Okay. So perhaps we could have somebody, I can't see from here, so if you could.
There's nothing there to see.
There's nothing there to see. Okay, while we fix that technological difficulty, you'll see here that you first want to power on. There's a little I or E. You want to click that. I can't hear you.
If you don't have one, come to me.
Oh, if you don't have one, go in the back. Okay, so go on out to the back and you can get yourself one. So you power it on, and then the question will appear, and you're going to either press the A, B, C, D, or the 1, 2, 3, 4 that correlates with your opinion of the question that you see up there. So, do we have a question up there?
Not yet.
Okay, so after you decided which one you're going to vote for, let's say you agree with 1 or A, you press 1, and then you decide, oh, actually, I meant to press 2, you'll get to, you can press clear, right, and that starts it over. So if you press 1, you'll actually see, after you press send, you'll actually see your number, because every single one has, if you see up at the screen, it'll say SMA mode, and it'll see like a number, like mine is clicker number 39. So you can actually confirm whether your vote has been taken when you vote. You'll see 39 will have a little X, and it'll show that it's actually sent. If you don't see that, that means you actually didn't hit send. Does everyone understand how that works? Yes.
Unfortunately, we're having trouble after we started, so.
Okay. Fine. So then I will take a little bit more time to introduce Todd. Perhaps we could have our first clicker vote before the discussion, and then have it after the discussion, and then you can see how people shape their opinion based on the discussion. That's okay. All right. So I'm going to introduce Todd Ellis, who is going to be actually the facilitator for the debate, for tonight's debate. I'm also going to introduce how the format's going to work. Okay. So I'll start with the format, and then I'll turn it over to Todd, who's going to facilitate the debate. As the debate club, we participate in a couple of different activities. The debate club / team does events like this, in which we do public forum events. We put on public debates on topics of interest. Medical marijuana is just one of the topics we can do. If you have a topic you'd like to see debated, come talk to me or anyone else on the panel, because we love to do this kind of thing. We consider it kind of our civic duty. It's our opportunity to get people engaged in arguing about important issues. The other thing we do is we travel to tournaments, and we compete intercollegiately with teams all over the Northeast and the nation. Our first tournament for this semester will be at the University of Vermont, the first weekend of November. And we also travel to as exotic locations as Ithaca, New York, to go to Cornell, or to other luxurious accommodations. We go across the country sometimes to Colorado for nationals and things like that. So it is a lot of fun, and we engage in competition with teams from all over the country. We are one of only a handful of community colleges that does so. So I think that we can be very proud of our local community college for participating in these activities. Because we definitely hold our own against some of these so-called Ivy League schools. What do they know? At any rate, I'd like to now take a minute and introduce Todd, who is going to be facilitating the debate. And as he will tell you, the names of all these debaters, what I do want to tell you is that this side of the debate is the proposition side, which means they are in favor of the resolution, and the resolution at hand being the ballot initiative. And that side of the debate, of that table, is the opposition. We do this funny thing in debates, which is that we pound the table. Okay, and it's kind of like the old school parliamentary House of Parliament from England. Hear, hear. So you are all welcome to participate in that way. If you think that a point is good, let's all practice together. Hear, hear. You can even growl if you like. You know, I know it's church, but right? And it kind of looks a little bit like Parliament. And what you do in that way is you kind of create energy. The other thing we do in this debate that creates some interactivity is called the point of information. You all don't get to do that, I'm sorry. You get to participate during the discussion. But you may notice that a student will pop up and will say point of information, at which point the speaker, or the person who's speaking, will turn around and either recognize them or shoo them down. It's part of the format, you know, it's meant to happen, so don't take it personally for either debater if they get ignored or if they get taken. I will be timekeeper, and I will hit the table a couple of times. Those are our secret signals, our secret society of debate, to let people know that it is the end of protected time and people can actually jump up and do a point of information, okay? But you don't really need to know all of that. I'm just letting you know because you might wonder why are people pounding the table and why is she pounding the table. That's just part of the format. It's part of the fun. The part at which you will get to participate is during the discussion, okay? So, without further ado, secretary to the team and facilitator for the debate, Todd Ellis.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for coming to the Cape Cod Debate Team's second public debate on the medicinal use of marijuana. Again, my name is Todd Ellis, and I'm going to be facilitating the debate, introducing the debaters, and just kind of making sure that the debate goes in the direction that it should. So, I'm going to introduce the debaters in terms of their speaking order, and so the first person who's going to be speaking tonight is Jackie Howlett here. And she's the president and the student representative of the nursing program at Cape Cod Community College, as well as a work study student in the simulation lab. Actually I'm doing it, my apologies, by seating order and not by the direction that people are going to go. So the second person sitting down is Michael Bertram, and he's currently the president of the team, and as well as an officer in the student center. Next to Michael is Matt Vasquez. He's our assistant coach, and he's formerly the president of the team, and currently a student of international economics at Suffolk University. And finally, at the end, we have Jacob Frazee, a former president of the Model United Nations at Dennis Yarmouth High School, and he's currently a student senator and the vice president of our debate team. So, with no further ado, I now invite Jackie Howlett as the first proposition speaker in favor of question 3 on the ballot initiative to legalize marijuana. Thank you.
I'm a little tall. A little taller than me.
By the sword we seek peace, but peace only under liberty. That's Massachusetts' state motto, and we know how to make distinctions. We'd rather die by live by the tyranny of others. That's why we are proud to propose that you vote yes on question 3 to make medicinal marijuana available and a viable thing for patients. So I'm going to review the prohibition of marijuana, and I'm going to get into a little bit of the medical legitimacy of its application in the medical sphere. And my partner, Michael, is going to go over how it's going to look in a public policy standpoint. So, brief history on prohibition. Prohibition is kind of steeped in a weird history that's wrapped in racism and special interests, and it's more of a political scheme rather than based on scientific study. In 1937, the Stamp Act essentially made all hemp product, even if it was industrialized hemp, which is completely different than marijuana itself, as we know it, made it so expensive that it could not compete with cotton. Anslinger, the head of the new formed Federal Bureau of Narcotics, said in one of his studies that to kind of add the fuel to the fire of reefer madness, that it makes Negroes think they are equal with white men, using this kind of fear of the time as a fulcrum of legislative removal of marijuana from the U.S. Pharmacopoeia, which it used to be for many years in 1942. Subsequent studies, such as the Schaefer Report, were also ignored that proved that marijuana in a medical application, because the only way you can research it by federal funding means is if you're studying its ability to be addictive, found that it was a lot less addictive than other conventional medicines. But Nixon ignored this. Surprise, surprise, and pushed his own agenda of drug scheduling in 1970, making drug schedules where marijuana and heroin are on par with each other as a Schedule I drug. So let's talk a little bit about these medical applications that I'm speaking so much about. The THC molecule works on a receptor in your brain that is very, very complex, and it's known as the sevenfold, and it controls all kinds of different mechanisms within your body. It binds to this receptor and can control inflammation, such as we see in IBS and gastric disease. We also see this in like glaucoma, and it also acts in a way that reduces pressure in the eye. It also can work as an analgesic. So this could be really beneficial to people with breakthrough and severe pain. Well, what do we use now for pain on different levels? One thing that's over the counter is acetaminophen. We found that long-term use of acetaminophen is detrimental to your liver, even if you're using it as intended by the packaging. We also find that ibuprofen is detrimental. It's an NSAID, and that has detrimental effects, not just on bleeding, your liver, and your heart. We find with corticosteroids that reduce inflammation, as I spoke of when it comes to glaucoma and IBS. That has detrimental effects. It makes your blood sugar extremely high and inhibits healing, especially if you're a diabetic, because 80% of people who have chronic illnesses have comorbidities, which mean other chronic illnesses that exist at the same time. So if you're taking something to treat something that exacerbates another disease. Yes, sir.
Now, I'd like to say that we don't chew willow bark to receive the effects of aspirin. We don't smoke opium to receive the effects of morphine.
Okay, so I'm gonna guess that you're implying that we're advocating the smoking. I would never advocate the inhaling of any kind of smoke. There are other delivery methods in which you can use medical marijuana, such as in edibles or vaporizing the raw material in a way to titrate. There's other medicines that are titrated to effects like digitalis. You titrate that and you take that medication until your blood pressure and your pulse is at a certain level. And then once that level is met, then you discontinue the medication. Titration of marijuana is useful in asthma when vaporized because the plant matter itself is not combusted and you're not inhaling the smoke. So that kind of fed into the many different ways in which marijuana can be applied, because just like Massachusetts, the proposition can make distinction between fact and fiction, and that's why we urge you to vote yes on question 3. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jackie. And I now invite the Leader of the Opposition, Matt Vasquez, to speak in opposition of the medicinal use of marijuana. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. I'm not used to being introduced, so I was a little anxious to get up here. Well, thank you. Quickly, I just want to say that I'm going to come up here and speak to you today about the problems inherent in this bill and the way this legislation has been written. My partner Jacob will come up and speak about the problem with dispensary systems as a whole and explain to you how those have detrimental effects on the societies that they're in now. But first, I'm going to speak a little bit about what was just offered to you by the Prime Minister. There's one big concession that our side is going to make in an attempt to kind of make this debate about what it should be about, and that is we're going to concede all of the argumentation about medicine. We feel that through our research we found that the medical community is murky and divided in their language of it. We don't know if it's good, we don't know if it's bad. There's been no real concise yes or no. There's people doing studies where it says it's good, there's people saying that it's bad. We're just going to leave that alone. Second reason is, again, this debate should be about public policy. And you'll understand why that's so important in a second when I get into my positive matter. And thirdly, I always sound like a jerk when I try to argue against medicine. People get very upset with me, so I'm not going to do it. Also, this line of argumentation about prohibition, while it was a nice history lesson on why cotton farmers and Nixon didn't like pot, it really didn't have any arguments as to why we should lift the prohibition now. And so we say thank you for bringing us back to 11th grade American history class where we learned again about the Stamp Act, but we're all set. Let's get into what we should be talking about, and that is the problems inherent in this bill and the problems with this public policy as a whole. All right, so the problems with this bill. In the wording of the legislation, we get that diseases such as cancer and MS and HIV can be treated by the use of medical marijuana. We say that that's fine, but also in there is this quote-unquote other medical reasons, and we say that this is way too loose of language to just put out into society and say that this is going to be a good thing. It also calls for the implementation and setup of up to 35 medical marijuana dispensaries and treatment centers. We also think that this is very dangerous. Jacob will get into that further, but back to this any other medical reason, what we're saying is that we can see a cottage industry popping up where you have medical practitioners who are just flooding the system with other medical reasons. Take, for example, the state of Colorado, where only 3% of prescribed users are affected with HIV, cancer, MS. We're talking about 3% of the entire medical people being treated by medicine. I mean, that's just not enough. You can't even stand up here on the grounds of utility and say that we're doing more for society in any sort of positive way. We're not raising aggregate utility at all. We're in fact opening up to more harm, and we say that is just extraordinarily bad. When people try to say, they give you the Dr. Spock version of utility, we want to do the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Well, this doesn't do the greatest good for the small number of people that are trying to use it properly. And we say that the harms inherent in this kind of public policy are way outweigh any sort of medical benefits that we could get from implementing it. Next is Section 11, or what I've jokingly come... Yeah, before I move on.
So you think it's better to be within a society where drug dealers and doctors and the people who profit from prohibition can continue profiting on the black market?
Someone's going to profit. And it's not medical doctors profiting on the black market, and it's easier to control illegal activity through proper policing than introducing hundreds of tons more marijuana onto our streets. The other murky area in this bill is the 60-day supply. We don't know what a 60-day supply is yet. It's not written in the legislation. That's going to be determined later. And I'd like to know who's going to decide that. What lobby is going to decide that? How are we going to figure that out? I think that's important information that needs to be ironed out before we say, yeah, this is going to be a great idea. And then all of a sudden you can have 3 pounds of marijuana in your house at any given time. We think this is bad. But back onto what I'm calling the Nancy Botwin clause, or Section 11, the hardship clause, right? If you can't get to your local dispensary, you can grow your own in your home, just as long as it's behind a locked door. Does anyone see this as problematic? I kind of do. If you're economically disenfranchised and then somebody gives you the ability to grow a 60-day supply of marijuana in your house, do you think that at some point you might have some incentive to sell it? Now hopefully you're getting my Nancy Botwin joke, or maybe you just don't watch Showtime, but that's okay. So I see this as a tremendous problem. It's just furthering that stigma attached to marijuana. It doesn't give any legitimacy to any sort of medical use for it, and it just furthers this black market that they're so worried about. What we're saying is this: we're not against the idea of medical marijuana. We're against the policy initiative that stands in front of the Massachusetts voters as it's written right now. There needs to be a better way to do this that doesn't open up our homes that are already wrought with distress by the use of legal prescription the misuse of legal prescription medications on our streets and in our communities today. We say that we need to do a better job of figuring out how to implement this the proper way. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt, for your speech. I now invite Michael Bertram to speak in proposition of marijuana use, or the medicinal use of marijuana.
But I want you to imagine an AIDS patient, one that's in chronic pain and on the brink of dying, perhaps, or maybe, but still able to function in daily life to some extent. And he has to take a bunch of opiates or other drugs, a cocktail of sorts, whose side effects are just as bad as the drugs as the disease that is consuming him. But now let's say that there's other options out there besides opiates, which can be addictive and just as debilitating as any kind of disease. And we are restricting that just because of some societal problems where some people might have an incentive to sell the pot they're growing, or just because we feel like we can't enforce the laws, or just because the policies aren't as concrete in other states as we feel that we can have in our state. But those are not reasons to not push forward this, because the policy failures of other states do not necessarily reflect those that will be in our state. Let's say doctors, for example. They fear that doctors, with this policy that will be put forward, will be incentivized to just basically write scripts for whatever thing, just because there's discretionary area in the bill. But that discretion could be reserved for people with psychological disorders. Because the reason that that people with glaucoma or AIDS, that's written in the bill that they can always get it, is that because it's known that marijuana is always going to help patients with those. But if you have post-traumatic stress disorder, which isn't the thing, that may or may not help you. That is why it's up to the doctor's discretion. Or other psychological disorders, it's a toss-up in the air. Some people it's going to help you, some it's going to hurt you. That's why this kind of discretion is needed in the bill. And now with the 35 dispensaries. Massachusetts might not be the biggest state in the country, but it's not really, really tiny. And this is the limit. We're not going to start out with 35 right away. It's the limit. The zoning law, I think if it's a maximum of 3 per county, or 35 in the entire state. And that can't be increased without going through the Department of Health. And this creates the fact that that access isn't as widespread as it is in other states, which causes a lot of problems. So it's a much better system here. In LA, for example, there are over 100 medical marijuana dispensaries, more than there are Starbucks. That's a lot. And this is where the problem is that the policy implications that Matthew is trying to push forward, the problems in that come into play with taking this and running with it. But we feel that in Massachusetts we're pushing forward a much more conservative version than we are here. The overall, many of the in the status quo, one of the things that doctors try to push now, one of the major arguments for this, is that there are alternatives, that there are opiates or even Marinol, or other synthetic marijuana things. But these do not have the desired effects, and they're not as easily controllable. Because let's say Marinol is one drug, that means it has one effect, it's always going to have that effect. But if you go to a dispensary, you can pick out things that do different stuff. If you have cancer and you're on chemo, you can get a candy or a lollipop, and that's going to not really get you that stoned. It's going to make you very, very hungry, very, very hungry. And they'll be able to overcome the problems of the fact that they're taking chemo and be able to eat. But if they take Marinol, they might get the same effect, but they're also getting really stoned and they might not be able to function. But if on the other hand, they can eat edibles or vaporize it if they feel that they want to get the effects of the pain relief that's for AIDS patients. Now there's clearly the policy implications can be good. We're not California, we're not Colorado. We can do a better job in those states. and that's why we feel that you should really vote for this initiative to legalize medical marijuana. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for your speech. And last but not least, I would like to invite Jacob Frazee as the member speaker for the opposition for a time not to exceed 5 minutes.
So my opponent on the proposition side mentioned how Massachusetts, it's a different state, different law, it's not going to be a policy failure. He mentioned doctors writing prescriptions, the discretion that's in the proposed law, how this is a more conservative policy, and I'm going to address all those. Now, medical marijuana laws differ from state to state, but our proposed law here in Massachusetts is almost identical to the one in Connecticut. They're both fairly conservative policies compared to other states, but if we use a little logic here, one would presume that the ramifications of the law would be similar if the laws are also similar. Now here's a first-hand account of, from a reporter in Connecticut. He said, "As I sat next to the shop, I noticed most of the customers are healthy-looking individuals who appear to be about 18 to 30 years old. According to the medical marijuana boosters, these guys are supposed to be in perpetual pain, and the only remedy is to use marijuana. Among the steady stream of patients who ebb and flow from the place, nobody has a handicap license plate, uses a walker or cane, or even exhibits any kind of physical ailment. In fact, several have come on bicycles. This is where the law fails. The proposed law allows marijuana to be given for other conditions as determined in writing by a qualified patient's physician. This provision here allows for large-scale abuse of the system.
Selects a medication that's an SSRI that is FDA approved for depression, is not approved for anxiety, but doctors give it for that in great effect all the time. Why isn't that judgment translated to this?
As I said, the provision allows for large-scale abuse of the system. And in many other states, including Connecticut, patients with cancer, MS, HIV, and other seriously debilitating ailments are just a drop in the bucket compared to the amount of people that are using marijuana for these other conditions as deemed by doctors. Now, another issue that I'd like to address is the distribution and growing of marijuana. Doctors didn't go to medical school and study marijuana, or which strain is most effective to treat certain types of ailments. And also, pharmacists aren't the ones running these dispensaries. The proposed system throws out what we have in place and puts the drug in the hands of dispensary agents who are volunteers or workers that don't have any prior felony drug convictions. To me, that's a very loose standard for someone who's controlling a large supply of this drug.
So do you think if they're going to be at a dispensary, being the ones who are giving people information, they're going to at least have some kind of pretty reasonable things, to a reasonable amount of information to be able to give to the person who's trying to get the marijuana?
Well, like I said, these doctors, they didn't go to medical school to prescribe marijuana. It wasn't a law in Massachusetts. They're not experts on it, and the pharmacists aren't running these dispensaries either. Now, on the subject of growing, the law allows for anyone that lives over 25 miles from the nearest dispensary to grow several marijuana plants in their home. Now, say we take several to mean 3. 3 plants produces enough marijuana for 13,000 joints a year. Now, that comes out to a little over 35 joints a day, which is very, very excessive for even the most severe cases of pain. Now, say our county, Barnstable County's dispensary, was located near the Cape Cod Mall or even near the church. That would mean that anyone who's qualified could grow marijuana in their homes in Wellfleet, Truro, Provincetown, and even part of Orleans. It's easy to see that this law is loosely written and leaves the proposed system wide open for large-scale abuse and misuse.
Thank you, Jacob, for your speech. And I now invite Lisa to take the reins here and begin the audience interactive part of the evening. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so are we all set? Okay, so take a look at your clickers. Now time for you to participate. There is a question on the board. Hopefully you can all read it. And you should take a vote. And basically turn it on. Mine turned itself off. And then you press the button of your opinion. If you mistake, you can put clear. And once you've decided, you hit send. And you should see your number actually light up. You'll see that. So what's your favorite topping for pizza? We're starting with a really controversial topic here, folks. Not if you're under 6, because there's really no debate that under 6 crowd really likes cheese.
They're not sending.
Not sending now.
Oh, they're not sending. All
I
right.
know, it's a great thing when it works.
It worked really well last time, right? Say cheese.
It's not those light up. Your number lights up if
Yeah.
it's sent.
Yeah, it's in it. Where's the receptor right there?
It's right here. It worked. I did this earlier, folks. I tested it out and it worked, but for some
What
reason,
about, did you hit start? It looks like it's not a.
I did hit start. Now it's saying to end it. Well, I know, we tried to use
We
this.
could try one more time after the debate is over. How's that?
That's a great idea.
Either way, I'm fine with it. We're doing it all right here. Hit end and let's see if we can try.
Pending question.
You see, the numbers are calculated on the side when it's working.
Did you hit, is this the clicker? Is it clicker?
Started.
Yeah, let's see. Let's start. It's not counting down.
You want us to vote?
It says received.
Yeah, but
I sent mine.
yeah, it's
It
not.
said received. What?
I think I better reboot it again.
All
Try
right.
one more time.
All right.
3 times the charm,
Yeah,
right?
that's right. Yeah, it said received, but it's not received. Okay, so that's okay because you know what? We don't need clickers to have no stinking discussion. We can have our own discussion right here. So who would like to, what I'll do is I'll just call on people and I've been told to keep our comments to about 2 minutes. We have some leeway there, but I will be cutting people off if they're going to about 3 minutes. And that's a lot of time. So who would like to, we have a microphone right here. Do you want to come up and speak so everyone can hear?
I'll come to the.
Or, okay, sounds good. So just raise your hand and the microphone will come to you. Any comments, questions, opinions you'd like to share? We have, about 20 minutes for discussion here, folks, so don't be shy.
So it still sounds like smoking marijuana is going to be the major issue, and it's still smoking. And I haven't heard any of the discussions talk about if it was a pill form or a lollipop. And you did mention a little bit of the quantity of THC, but there's got to be some way to standardize THC to make the amount of use valid for a particular disease that it's going to be used.
Okay, so would anyone like to respond? If you want to come up here, if you have some comments to make, if you want to come right here, you can, so people can hear with the microphone.
I really do like your question, but one thing that comes about when you're looking at different species of anything, whether it be plant or animal, that they have different characteristics, and that's where cloning and different strains of this product will be engineered for different things. And we're already seeing this in the states that have had this longer, that there's different strains that are better for treating like inflammation, and then other strains that are better for treating, strictly analgesia. And this is that's one benefit we get from some of these states that don't have the most perfect things, is that they do already have a program where they're actually been developing the product. They have people that are been breeding different plants and doing different things for a long time. And I think that's something that should be addressed, because we got to consider that if this does pass, this isn't going to be like overnight, boom, we have like 35 dispensaries and all this marijuana everywhere.
So the FDA is not involved.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
The FDA is not involved.
No.
No, it's not. But FDA is not involved in vitamins, and those are on the market too.
Marijuana is a vitamin.
Okay, thank you. Yep, go ahead. Someone else wants to make a comment? Tricia?
I was wondering in regards to the type of people that do take this medication for actual painful illnesses such as HIV and AIDS, I am unaware. Is there truly something on the market that will help those people? I heard someone say Marinol. Will that take away pain to a degree?
Jake, you want to respond?
Yeah, there's synthetic forms of the drug that doctors say are also viable and have very positive effects, more so than just smoking the drug. There's Marinol, Sesame, they're both synthetic forms of THC. And as I said earlier, a lot of people believe that the future of marijuana as a drug doesn't lie within smoking the drug or using it in its crude form, but isolating the valuable components and using them in synthetic forms.
Okay, another question or comment?
And either the proposition or the opposition can answer this. Who benefits from this? If this were to pass, we've heard a lot about the people suffering from glaucoma or HIV/AIDS. How do the dispensaries benefit, and what sort of profit might we be looking at?
Okay, question about the profit, you want to take that?
Well, the dispensaries are set up as non-profits, right? So they'll have kind of that structure, but they'll still recoup expenses and they will still sell their product. As far as the insurance and the doctors go, there's nothing in the language that binds insurance companies to covering this kind of medication, so there's not really an incentive or an inherent incentive structure for insurance companies to either support or kind of condemn this kind of legislation. But as far as the dispensaries go, simple microeconomics would tell you that nobody would get into business if there is no profit. So this will be a business. People will make money off of it, and that's just. And again, the loopholes in this kind of legislation allow for this potential for rampant misuse, and that's what we're seeing in states like Connecticut, Colorado, Southern California. They're seeing these dispensaries kind of turn into these shops that are being abused. But as far as like specific numbers go, it's tough to say because I'm sure a lot of people pay in cash.
I wonder who determines the delivery method, and does a doctor prescribe it and then that individual takes it to the dispensary and gets whether a joint or a brownie or a lollipop or a vapor rub. And if that individual cannot make it to the dispensary system and they're growing their own marijuana at home, how do they make that delivery method the way the doctor is prescribing?
Okay,
How does
so-
someone at home make it a vapor
So a
rub?
question about the delivery method. Who would like, you want to take that, Mike, or? Mike, you gonna take that?
Basically, the doctor gives you a recommendation. You can get a card from the Department of Health, and when you go into the dispensary, you get the pick and choose or any kind of goodies, or basically it's like a candy store for people who have the cards. In the sense that they don't have the type isn't it's not like you have to get this kind. It's they can just pick and choose what they would like based on their needs or wants.
Just wanted to say something about what a shame it is that we believe that a pharmaceutical, I think even the counter argument says that Marinol is a good option. I think the pharmaceutical companies have us brainwashed that synthetic is better than a natural organic plant. And I'm not sure about the numbers, but I'm sure the greatest backer of the counter argument would be the pharmaceutical companies.
Jackie, would you like to respond?
I would love to respond to that. Thank you. And yeah, I really appreciate that statement, no matter what your stance on this issue, there is a problem with, polypharmacia in America that, I think it's kind of endemic of our society that we look for that, that gratification to solve a problem, but a lot of times where you have a list of side effects, it's really effects. If you have something that acts on the body, you're going to elicit all different effects, and because people have varying chemistries and body weights and tolerance for things, you're going to have somebody that has, takes a certain drug and they're going to, have a great effect. However, we're seeing over the long term, especially, we're having a lot more drug recalls because in 1992, in response of AIDS, the development of drugs have been more fast-tracked, that you can have a drug go to market during the 4th clinical trial. So you can have a drug be developed and go to market within 12 years, which when you compare to how marijuana has been used in different civilizations for thousands of years, and yet you have people saying it's not enough research to see what the effects on society would be. I find that to be not really consistent with the original philosophy behind safety with drugs. So I appreciate that statement.
I'll put a different twist on this, since I'm a certified public accountant. It actually says in the law that nonprofit corporations will be the grower dispensers, the 35 that we're talking about around the states. They must be nonprofit. So I would take exception to one thing that was said, that there would be an incentive for making money on this, given that our understanding of a nonprofit is that you don't make a net profit on what you do. But here's my question. Has anybody figured out how somebody is going to form a nonprofit corporation to be a dispensary and then go through the very important step to make that nonprofit corporation tax exempt through filing for a 501c3 organization with the IRS when you're doing something that is illegal according to federal law?
I might actually answer that question only because I actually started a nonprofit, and I am the executive director of a nonprofit called Dump and Run that helps colleges with recycling discarded material when students move out of the dorm rooms. And the federal government doesn't care. I mean, the IRS doesn't care if your activities are legal or illegal, as we all know. That's one of the reasons why the RICO law works so well, getting people caught, because all they care about is your money. I mean, they don't care if somebody's an illegal immigrant or an undocumented immigrant is filing taxes, because all they care about is your income. So they actually don't care. Now, whether or not they share that information with, any kind of federal authorities, that might be the issue. But the IRS would care less if your product is legal or illegal. All they care about is your money.
I disagree with that.
I'm just from my own experience, I just happen to know
I
that.
filed many of these,
Yes.
not for illegal corporations, though.
Yes, I don't personally have any illegal corporations, just to make that very clear.
Oh, hi. I was wondering if there was anything with the state for taxing it.
Question about the state tax. Could you clarify that question? I think.
Well, if the state was going to be involved
Like
with a
sales
tax. Yeah, sales tax.
Oh, a question about sales tax. Does anybody know about that? Matt.
As far as sales tax go, no. And as far as other taxes go, I'm sure we'll get muddy with the fact that anybody providing the service will be a nonprofit, so there's obviously some tax exemptions and issues there. But there are heavy fees involved in setting these up. That's written into the legislation. I don't believe that the amounts have been determined as to what the amount of those fees will be, but that seems to be kind of the structure of recouping any sort of revenue to the state is the fees involved with setting up and promoting this kind of policy.
I actually have a question. And my question would be, my understanding is you said that there was going to be a card that the folks who are receiving the medical marijuana will have a card. And my question is there an age limit on the card, or is there also at the end? And then the second part of the question is, I also heard you say that it's a class 1 substance, and it's a federally, as a class 1, it's against the law, but this is a state ballot. So can you tell me a little bit about, like, if I'm a carrier of a card and let's say I'm 15 and I'm with my medical marijuana, but it's federally against the law, could I be arrested?
That's an excellent question. I'm sure Mike will have many answers.
You have to be 21 to get a card in the state. And basically, unless you get busted by a federal officer, you're fine. Like, I wouldn't go walking onto a military base with your card and a pocket full of weed, because then you're definitely going to get busted because it's illegal under federal law, but state and federal law are sovereign. So, like, the state doesn't have to follow federal laws, and the federal government doesn't have to follow state laws. That's why the feds are always busting dispensaries in California, basically. That answers your question.
Thank you.
Okay, we have time for 2 more questions or comments, and feel free to make a comment if you'd like. You don't have to ask a question, although questions are absolutely welcome as well, but I know that some of you may have opinions you'd like to share for or against the ballot initiative. We welcome those at this time.
I have a question. With the card, if you have a legitimate reason for having one, will there be any regulation on who can have this card? For instance, if you're in a profession like an EMT, police, fire, or lifeguard, would you still be able to get one of these cards? And what do you think about people in those professions being able to have this with a legitimate medical reason for having a card?
Okay, so a question about the possible restrictions due to particular people's jobs or their employ. Okay, does anybody like to take that? Go ahead, Jackie.
As we all work for different employers, they have different policies on drug testing, and if they have that policy that determines that marijuana is something that they, is forbidden, I guess, in that position, then that's something that it wouldn't prevent you from getting a card, but the one who would seek out this kind of treatment would have to make a choice, and it's a tough choice of, whether or not they can carry out that profession. And in some cases, when they are qualifying for this card, especially if you have like a chronic illness, you might not be a firefighter if you have, MS at that point. But, it's definitely, it's a very complex issue, and I really like this discussion because it really, and all your contributions are amazing because it really brings, there's a lot of things to consider whether you're going to vote yes or whether you're going to vote no.
So I want to go back to the amount that each person will be able to receive at the dispensary. I believe I heard a 60-day supply.
Yeah, go ahead, Jacob wants to respond to that. So what's the amount?
So a 60-day supply. First of all, when I equate that to other standard prescription amounts, I only take one prescription medicine on a regular basis, and I renew that prescription monthly. So that's half of that amount. And then the other question is, I think one of you guys already referred to it, who determines what a 60-day supply is? Who determines whether I smoke 1 joint or 12 joints?
Okay, so there's 2-part question. First is, what is the amount that they're allowed to take? And the second is, who determines that amount? Go ahead, Jacob.
As far as what a 60-day supply entails, it has not been determined yet. It's like I said earlier, a lot of the physicians didn't go to school studying marijuana. So as far as dosages, whether it's 1 a day, 2 a day, 3 a day. It'll probably be helped on a case-by-case basis, but as it stands right now, there's no limit to what a 60-day supply is.
Okay, yep, one more question? Sure. We have time for, there's one more question. Hey. Sorry.
That's all right.
Sorry, I did say 2 more, but then.
You did.
I did. But
I don't need the mic.
Okay, go right ahead.
Will there be a limitation on the number of nonprofit pharmaceutical companies that can open? Or will this turn into something similar like the pill mills in Florida where they're open on every corner?
I think we said 35, right? It's 35 for the entire state. Yeah.
Thank you.
But
And no more than later.
they can make more later, perhaps the early number is 35. Okay. All right, so at this point, I think we're going to try the clickers one more time. So, let's see if it works. Oh, look at that, it's working.
Mariah, we rock.
So once you hit send, there's no going back. Just so you know, we're going to do it once. You know, if you want to clear it, you have to clear it before you hit send. Does everybody have a clicker? Does anybody not have a clicker that wants one? Look at that! Cheese is the favorite topping. You'd all do well with my 3-year-old. She likes cheese. Okay, so this is the real one, yes. So regarding medical marijuana, do you strongly support it? B, mildly support it? C, mildly oppose it? Or D, strongly oppose it?
Now I'm starting it, now you can.
Okay, so now we have 1 minute to vote. Okay, 10, there we go, it's done. Okay, so it looks like we have 13 to strongly support, 3 mildly support, 7 mildly oppose, and 4 strongly oppose. Okay, so the second question, smoking marijuana poses no health risks. A, strongly agree, B, mildly agree, C, mildly disagree, and D, strongly disagree. Give ourselves 30 seconds to answer. And are you writing down the answers for us so we'll be able to get those results? People are interested in getting the results after the effect. We'll be able to provide those for you. Okay, another 5 seconds. Strongly agree 1, mildly agree 9, mildly disagree 11, and strongly disagree 8. Last question. Regarding medical marijuana in Massachusetts, I believe it will have A, only positive effects on our community, B, more positive effects than negative, C, more negative effects than positive, and D, only negative effects. And this is the last question, correct? So we'll give it another 20 seconds and think about your response. Five-second warning. Results are A, only positive effects in our community were 2, more positive effects than negative 11, more negative effects than positive 10, and only negative effects 3. So the debaters can chew on that a bit as they prepare their final rebuttal statements. So I will turn things over to Todd. We'll have 4 minutes on either side to finish the debate. Debaters, would you like to have points of information for your closing remarks? Yes? All right. Yeah, okay. So, take away Todd.
Again, I wanted to thank everyone here because really, public discourse and public interaction is especially through debate, is the route to knowledge, and an educated voter is the epitome of a good democracy, and you guys are all doing your civic duty by coming here tonight. So, with no further ado, I now introduce the first speaker for the rebuttal, Jackie. And she will be again speaking in proposition of medical marijuana for a speech not to exceed 4 minutes. Thank you.
So I thank you, members of the community, for your participation and your attendance here tonight. I also thank the opposition, although I find their use of statistics much like a drunk uses a lamppost for support rather than enlightenment, and uses some vague doubts to try to illustrate much to do about nothing, because they would like you to ignore medical facts through their concession and just worry about the hunky-chunky political workings, but to ignore medical fact and just harp upon particulars is very irresponsible. So let's talk a little bit more about medical application and try to bring that home, and then really kind of take the fear out of all these doubts that we have. So I'm a nursing student today at clinical. I had a cancer patient, and they're a new diagnosis. They have lost severe amounts of weight. They have no appetite, they're wasting away, and I gave them a medication called megastressol acetate. One of the side effects, among many, is it's a teratogen to fetus and has detrimental reproduction ramifications that are permanent, and it also makes glucose in your body completely null and void. And this person had a hypoglycemic crisis. I'm not saying that this policy being enacted through this ballot initiative would give me the power to have different alternatives that a physician would order for me to implement, but as time wears on, I would like to have more safe options, whether it be marijuana or any other chemical component. Justin Reinbach wrote to the New York Times. He's a seated judge in New York. He had pancreatic cancer, and he tried Marinol, and it didn't work at all. He said, and I quote in his article, that every drug he took to solve one problem led to 2 more. And then he was so desperate, used marijuana, and he said every forkful was a victory. And that this is not a law and order issue, that this is a medical and human right issue. We have a responsibility, even on the state level, even if every particular hasn't been figured out, because think about a lot of the laws we have and a lot of ways we live by. Do we have every particular figured out? And another thing you gotta remember before this debate even started, it was illustrated that laws are not static, they're dynamic, and by the will of the people, if we adopt this law now, we can change the parts of it that don't work. And, we got this, one really erroneous thing proposed by the op is that the ramifications of Connecticut is healthy-looking people are getting marijuana. Well, somebody with post-traumatic stress disorder doesn't have a limp. Somebody with Lyme's disease isn't wearing a t-shirt that says, "Look, I have Lyme's disease." So to try to, broad brush and say, certain people should not be using different types of therapies and placing a value on people, because yes, even if the side effect is that people get stoned that take marijuana, it's better than the side effect that we see with opiates of CNS and respiratory depression that you can die from, addiction that can riddle your life. So please consider this initiative, because if it's shot down, any other initiative that is of the same language, because in Massachusetts, a one-issue initiative, and if it's of the same subject, it cannot be visited again for 4 years. And in 2011, over 165,000 people were diagnosed with cancer. And, over 4 years, there's going to be, times that by 4, and how many people are not going to have the possibility of having an option if this is an adjunct therapy? Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie, for your rousing conclusion to the side of the proposition, and I now invite Matt Vasquez to the floor for the opposition to this particular point. Thank you.
I'm now going to, for the next couple seconds, talk to you about the points against all of the points that Jacob and I brought you by the proposition. Ready? Wait for it. Nothing. They said nothing to our points. They tried to package their stance on the use of medicine as refutations to our points, as good ways of, mitigating the problems that are inherent in this bill, but they just fell flat. They just sounded like conspiracy theorists against Big Pharma and actually did not engage in anything that my partner and I said at all. Now it's fun to come up here and, make us look like the stuffy guys because, we're trying to talk down against medical marijuana. But the fact of the matter is we cannot escape the inherent problems, the cataclysmic problems in this legislation. Now, what did Jacob and I bring to you today, right? We brought to you the problems in the bill. We brought to you the problems in the dispensary system as we see it now. Right, so the problems in this bill, as I outlined, were this kind of what is a 60-day supply, and we kind of think that that's important. Shouldn't we know what a 60-day supply is? Shouldn't we know how much medical marijuana we're going to be putting into our streets and into our communities as a whole before we kind of stand up as a community and say that we want this? We think that that's an important thing. Now they just say that, oh, well, we should step forward now to make progress for the future. Well, yeah, I'd want to step forward too, but I'd want to know if I'm stepping off the edge of a cliff. And that's what we need to know. What are we doing? If we're enacting public policy that's going to make things worse under the sheep's clothing of making things better, then it's wrong, right? We don't want to step off the edge of the cliff. We live in an area of the country that has been drastically affected by such pill mills and prescription medications. We don't want to offer up more. Yes?
We want to prevent people from getting access to things that are helping just because something might go wrong.
I want to limit access to things that might be more potentially harmful in the way that we introduce them. I'm not about, and I've said this from the start, myself and Jacob are not about limiting people's ability to seek out medical treatment. We feel that we just need better policy to do it. We need better management. We need better ways of distributing this kind of medicine to the people who actually need it so it is not abused by the people who don't need it, and for the people that seek to use this kind of legislation for nefarious and selfish purposes. We feel like that's a perfectly acceptable statement and stance to take when it comes to social justice. We don't think that we can just stand up here and wave the utility flag and say that we're going to make things better for everyone when in fact we're making things worse. We feel it's dangerous, it's irresponsible, and it doesn't satisfy any sort of communal principle at all. Jacob also talked to you about, the example of Connecticut. Now we use that example because it's close to home, and they kind of made fun of it because, healthy people, who might have brain disorders or Lyme disease or things that don't present in a physical manner, we're going in there. So it's tough to say, right? But what we do know is that it is being abused. The system does see rampant abuse, and we say that we cannot, under this legislation, solve for those abuses, and we can't make those abuses any less apparent until we figure out what these kind of loopholes and kind of irregular language in the bill are, right? Until we know what a 60-day supply is, until we kind of nail down how someone is going to be allowed to grow marijuana in their home, we feel like we cannot just step away and say, no, this is a great idea. We think it's harmful, we think it's dangerous, and we think that for all the good that they say that they're trying to do to the medical community, there are other alternatives and better ways. We need to figure out ways to get those as ballot initiatives. We need to figure out how to make better policy and place better policy in front of our voters. And until we do that, we stand against this bill and medical marijuana. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt, for an exciting conclusion to the opposition to this particular bill and debate. And I now invite Lisa to take the stand and continue with the evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so a couple of things. First and and foremost, please do not leave the building with these. We need to collect them. And I believe we're going to be collecting them at the door. Okay, so please make sure you turn these back. These were, rather expensive and of absolutely no use to you without the computer and the unit, so don't take them. The second thing I wanted to announce really quickly is that we have a post-vote that we'd like you to take, and that will be with a red card. You took a vote coming in with a green card. You're going to take a post-vote with a red card, and we'll be able to tally that and see how this discussion or how the debate may have affected your thoughts. The third thing I'd like to remind you all is that if you have not yet registered to vote, the votes in here are fun. The real vote comes in November, and we'd like you to be registered. So Eric, would you please raise your hand? He is actually going to be staffing a table in the back, and we welcome all of you to come in the back. We still have some goodies back there. There's some refreshments if you want to come. We don't want to take any food with us. And we are going to be available there to speak with you if you want to come speak with myself or any of the debaters. You're more than welcome to. I'd also like to thank very much the Freedom from Addiction Network for helping to co-sponsor this event. Without them, this would not be happening. And I'd like to thank them. They've done a fabulous job of helping to coordinate this. So thanks again. Please don't forget to vote. Please come have some goodies, and please register to vote. And don't forget to turn these in. Thank you.
And I just wanted to make one more announcement before everybody leaves. I'm Trudy Avery. I am a committee member on the Sandwich Substance Abuse Prevention Task Force. And just wanted to say thank you very much for everybody coming. We do have another event coming up, so please mark your calendars on Tuesday, the 23rd of October. We'll be listening to a presentation by Dr. Ken Duckworth. And he will be talking about the effect of marijuana on the brain chemistry in youth. So thank you for your time.